6 games, 200 plus hours, and 20,000 words worth of notes later, I have made a FromSoft tier list which includes every single boss from Dark Souls 1 to Elden Ring. The way I've set this up is I've separated the list into 8 tiers, those being terrible, bad, lackluster, okay, good, very good, great, and amazing. This might sound a bit vague, but I'll explain each individual tier once we get to them. We're going to start from terrible and work our way up from there. I included every single boss from all FromSoft games, excluding Demon Souls because it's the only game that I can't actually play right now, and only some of the Elden Ring bosses for the obvious reasons. The Elden Ring bosses that I did choose were mainly the ones that give an achievement and a remembrance, but also some of my personal favorites. When it comes to the actual way I rated the bosses, I took into account their design, lore, music, arena, and also their actual fight, so their attacks and the general flow of the fight. This being said, I did rate each fight for how it works in their own respective game, so there might be a slight bias towards the newer games as they don't have as many flaws in their combat system as the older ones do, but this was the fairest way to do it that I could think of. This tier list was originally supposed to be one long video, but ended up being way too long for that, so what I plan to do instead is split it into one video per tier, and then when I'm finished with every single tier, then I'll compile them all together and make one long video at the end. So if you hear me say something like in this video, then I'm referring to the entirety of the tier list, not just the current segment we're at. Also, because of the length of the video, it's going to be a bit more rent-like than what I'm planning to make for the rest of my channel. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's get into the actual tier list. So starting off the list, we have the worst boss in Souls history, Bed of Chaos. Fighting this boss is probably one of the most frustrating things I've ever done in any game ever. There are simply no redeeming qualities about this boss at all. The entire fight is just you running across the arena to destroy 2 glowing branches to lower her shield, to where you just run down the middle and hit her real body once, killing her. When simplified like this, it doesn't really sound all that bad, but oh my lord did they make this simple task as frustrating as humanly possible. As you're running through the boss room, Bed of Chaos will do these swiping attacks, which admittedly are pretty easy to dodge, but the thing is, even if you are mid-roll, if the hands connect with your character, it will drag you with it, which 99% of the time will end up you being dragged into one of the 200 holes in her arena, which of course instantly kills you. The saving grace here being that it will save your progress, so once you have destroyed a branch, it will stay dead. While replaying Dark Souls 1 for this video, she took me 7 tries, and that is with knowing exactly what to do. I can't even imagine how miserable this fight must be for someone who's going in completely blind. So somehow the worst part of the fight isn't even the fight itself, it's the run back to the fight. Not only do you most likely have to do the run back several times from being dragged off the arena, but the actual run back will take you 1 minute and 40 seconds every single time. This also includes having to put on your lava ring every single time, as there's a small patch of lava they have to walk through every single time you run back from the boss. All of this culminates into the worst fight in all of Souls. I mean, at least it's kind of satisfying killing the little thing at the end. But man, fuck this fight. Okay, so next up we have Lud and Zallen from Dark Souls 2. I'm going to be completely honest here. 90% of the reason it's this far down is purely because of its runback. This runback is infamously bad, and if you have ever done it, you will understand why they got this placement. To elaborate if you've never done it yourself, to get to this boss you have to first get in a coffin, which then plays an unskippable cutscene where you slide off of the castle wall. From here you have to run in a straight line for roughly 2 to 3 minutes while being completely blinded by a snowstorm. And like this wasn't bad enough, you're also getting constantly rushed down by unicorn enemies that will come out of literally nowhere and try and stab you. When you finally get to the boss, it doesn't really get all that much better. The actual boss is a duo fight which consists of 2 separate reskins of the same boss from earlier in the same DLC. This is awful in several ways. First off, it's extremely lazy of FromSoft for 2 of the 3 bosses to be the same boss but reskinned. Secondly, the boss that was reskinned, Ava, who we'll get back to later in this list, isn't even that bad of a boss. Without giving it too much of a ranking, when fought alone, Ava is actually a pretty enjoyable fight, but sadly the same can't be said for Lud and Zallen. Ava was very obviously made to be fought one-on-one, so when you put 2 of them together in the same boss fight, the results aren't all that great. They constantly overlap, stopping you from getting in attacks if you're lucky, and instantly killing you if you're unlucky. They will also sometimes overlap in such a way that there is no possible way of not taking damage. So the only viable way of fighting them is to rush one of them down, making it a one-on-one fight that isn't really all that hard. This will most likely end in you dying several times, having to do that awful run back over and over again. So yeah, this boss doesn't really have all that much going for it, which is why they deserve their placement in the terrible tier. For our third entry into the terrible list, we have Ancient Wyvern, and I'm going to be honest, I don't really have that much to say about this one. The fight itself isn't really much of a fight, and more of a sprint really. The entire fight is just running through a linear path filled with enemies until you get to the end, where you do a plunging attack and kill the boss in one hit. During the run, the Wyvern will do several fire-breathing attacks in your general direction, but I honestly wouldn't blame you if you didn't even know this, even after having done the fight yourself, as they don't really do anything most of the time. The enemies that are placed in this path aren't particularly hard to kill, but there isn't really any reason to kill them, as there isn't any punishment for just simply running past them. They do have some really annoying attacks you have to deal with as you run past, as they have a plethora of long-range attacks they will spam at you. But the worst part is the big dude at the end, as there is a high chance that he will snipe you off the ladder as you climb it, which 99% of the time will end with you dying and having to do the run all over again. And even after all this, there's still a fairly big chance that the plunging attack will simply just bug and you fall to your death. So yeah, the entire fight is basically just a run back that you have to do just to do a single plunging attack. I was honestly wondering if I was going to place it on the list at all, but after having done it again while replaying all the games for this video, its placement is very deserved. Next we have the last boss of the terrible tier, and already the second Dark Souls 2 boss to make an appearance, the Executioner's Chariot. This entire fight is pretty much a gimmick fight. We have to run through a circular corridor as a chariot rides around in circles and one-shotting you if you don't get into one of the cubbyholes in time. This obviously wasn't enough, so there's also a plethora of skeletons throughout the corridor, including inside the little cubbyholes. These skeletons will infinitely respawn unless you kill a specific enemy who is hiding, but this isn't really valuable as you should just try and sprint to the end. Problem is that if there is a skeleton inside one of the cubbyholes, you better start praying, as there isn't really anything you can do about it. If you attack, then there's a high chance that the chariot will hit you, as the space you're in is extremely narrow. And of course, the skeleton can also hit you, which pushes you inside the path of the chariot. When you get to the end, there is a lever that lowers a gate that the chariot crashes into, which turns it into a one-on-one fight between you and the horse that pulled the chariot. This is a very boring fight, as the horse only has 3 attacks that it can use, but it has a saving grace that once you unmount the chariot, there's a very high chance that you'll just kill it on your first try. So like with the rest of the entries in this list, the worst part of this fight is the run back. The run back itself is fairly long, taking around 1 minute and 20 seconds to get to the fog gate. This is a fairly substantial amount of time, and only making it worse is the abundance of enemies that are scattered throughout the run. The absolute worst part being the end, which is crowded by a fairly hard enemy that will kill you in only a few hits. This being made many times worse by the fact that in Dark Souls 2, the fog gate doesn't give you iframes, so you will most of the time get hit out of the animation and die. And trust me, this mechanic is very much going to be mentioned a few more times throughout the video. All of this added together makes for a pretty terrible fight, which is why it very much deserves a spot in the terrible tier. Okay, yeah, so I lied, but think of this as a bonus entry, and I swear this will be the only minor boss from Elden Ring that I include out of spite. As I was making this video, I was talking to a friend of mine about duo fights in this series, and he mentioned duo Crucible Knights, and I got so worked up from shitting on them to him that I decided fuck it, I'll add him to the list purely out of spite. But okay, in my defense, duo Crucible Knights highlights something that I think is a fairly important problem when it comes to a lot of duo fights in FromSoft games. FromSoft for some reason really likes to throw in 2 random enemies into a fight and calling it a duo fight. Obviously know that this isn't really fair to say for a random dungeon fight in Elden Ring. It's obviously there as padding, as they couldn't make a unique fight for every dungeon in the game. That's just unreasonable. But even then I think it's a problematic fight. As I was fighting these two, I started wondering if FromSoft even playtests the duo fights they throw in together. Duo Crucible Knights aren't even fun to play against, they have negative synergy with each other. They're both very aggressive melee enemies that have an insane amount of poise. The point about poise probably being the worst offender of the fight. Giving them unlimited poise makes them near impossible to fight as a heavy sword user, where you depend on staggering enemies when it comes to fighting multiple ones. You're locked in animation for far too long, making it so unless you are waiting an ungodly amount of time in between each hit, waiting for the perfect chance to hit, you're pretty much guaranteed to get the hit back. There are examples of fights against multiple of the same enemy as a dungeon fight that actually works pretty well. Take for example the fight against the Crystallians. While at first glance they would suffer from the same problem as they also have infinite poise, they also have an added mechanic where you can break them, making it so they have no poise. This is a smart solution to the exact problem that duo Crucible Knights have, making it a lot more rewarding to wait for an opening to get your hits in. This also makes it a lot more worthwhile to trade hits. I will give FromSoft some slack though. I'm sure they were very pressed for both time and resources as they were making Elden Ring. It's way bigger than any game they've ever made before, and still manages to have an impressive amount of diversity in dungeon design and fight. In order to have well-designed fights like the Crystallians, they probably had to make sacrifices like the duo Crucible Knights. I just wish they hadn't made it a boss for a heroes team.